Coming up this morning, we don't have time to go through the 279 questions the Saints have heading into training camp, which begins in just 12 days, mind you. So we'll just pick out the 4 or 5 most important ones. Also, among all the reasons why we're concerned, there has to be at least a few, couple, whatever. There has to be reasons to be optimistic. No, really. What are they? I'm certain we can find something. We're going to find that. Also, we're going to talk about a great new podcast called When the Lights Go Out and tell you why you should check it out. All this with a New Orleanian living in my second favorite city of Chicago, sportswriter and podcast host Hart Pasani. Coming up next on the Dattitude podcast.
If you're looking for the latest scoop and in-depth interviews on the Saints, the NFL, the Pelicans, LSU, along with the best bets of the week, then lucky you. Along with high-powered, in-the-know guests who cover our teams, Jim Derry brings plenty of Dattitude. And he'll always tell you the way it is, or at least the way he thinks it is.
Where you at, New Orleans? And hello to my friends elsewhere, everywhere, out there who have been counting the hours until I return from summer break. No need to count any longer. I am back, and so is Dattitude. Episode number 252, presented by Evangel Securities for a Friday, July 12th, 2024. I am your host, well-rested host, Jim Derry. Whether you are watching on one of our NOLA.com social media channels or listening on demand to the podcast, as always, I thank you for being a part of the Dattitude family. The Dattitude family is with me this morning. Jerry, welcome back. Thank you, sir. Where I've been, it was called, David, let's just call it was staycation, get a lot of sleep time. Well, at least kind of. A lot of kids fighting, stuff like that. Barry's back with us. We are back on Dattitude. We have a great show for you, and we have jam-packed shows coming up. Just telling Gabe in the green room. By the way, everybody say a little, I don't know, prayer, whatever you want to call it, for the right word for our friend Gabe Henderson, who's in the green room, our great producer who lives in Houston, and he is his home still without power from Hurricane Beryl. He is still working from, I believe, his girlfriend's mom's house north of Houston, where they do have power. So he is working behind the scenes. He is with us, but let's just hope that he can go home soon, and we will. He's still working. You got to love it. You can be a part of the show, as you saw our friends, by typing in your comment on YouTube, Facebook, X. And if you haven't already done so, subscribe to our YouTube page, where you will always know when we are going on the air live, as well as have access to all our shows and short takes. And you get in touch with me on X at Jim Derry Jr. or via email, jderry@theadvocate.com. What is going on with everybody? Has anything happened since I went on vacation? Nothing. Nothing happened. There was no news. We had nothing. You know what we did have? We had a lot of Pelicans news. We have not probably given enough love to the Pelicans. Probably not going to talk a lot of Pels today, but next week I think we will. Doug Mouton's coming on the show next Monday. Fletcher Mackel is coming on the show next Wednesday, excuse me. And then Friday we start our NFL previews. I have been working, even though you haven't seen me on the pod, I have been working the past week plus. I have not been on vacation this entire time. I actually spent part of my time on vacation working. And I spent all this week working on NFL previews. I was asked to do shows. It's funny. The phone doesn't ring for a month and a half. And then I come back. I guess they knew I was back in earnest. Did 3 shows this week. Did Eric Asher on Wednesday, which I think aired yesterday for the first time. You can find it on WLA's website inside New Orleans. Did Final Bet last night with Garland, and also taped the show with Fletcher Mackel. I don't know why necessarily. I guess it's that time of the year. It's funny. I get called a lot in July because people want to talk about sports betting things. So, Brian, hello this morning. Welcome back. I am recharged. You're still in the Fire Loomis camp. Okay, well, I don't know. Breaking news this morning. Shocker of all shockers. Paul Skeens is starting the All-Star game for the National League. 7 no-hit innings yesterday. I had some people on both social media and some friends say they were pissed off that they don't let them finish. They just look, when they hit 100 pitches, that's it. They just take them out. So like it, hate it, whatever it is, that's the way of the new Major League Baseball. Almost every manager, it's kind of like in the NFL, all these dumbass coaches using analytics, which I can't stand. Oh, I mean, if you watch the show for any period of time, you know what I think about. Oh, it's 4th and 4 on the 42. There's a 52% chance we get it, a 48% chance we don't. Got to go for it. I hate that. But anyway, that's how baseball is now too, with pitching at least. I will say this. I think there have been fewer pitching injuries this year than I've seen in a while. So maybe there is something to it. Not going to completely knock it. But look, I want to talk a couple things about the Pels trades. Again, talk a little bit more about the upcoming show schedule with the NFL previews coming up. Before we get to the rest of the show, let me continue my story about our friends at Evangeline Securities. You didn't forget. You know what Evangeline Securities is about. Of course, they are a company that can help you decide if it's the right time to sell your family or privately run business. And just as importantly, they can figure out what that business is worth. Might be a decision that y'all have been thinking about for quite some time. If that's you or someone who is near or dear to your heart, then reach out to Evangeline's founding and managing partners, Nick Braden and Ron Hemelt, because they will maximize the value for your business. And they do that by scheduling a complimentary evaluation. By the way, Nick and Ron both grew up in New Orleans. And after a decade or so at big-time business schools and then the hustle and bustle of New York City, they came home because they wanted to help the people they love here. It doesn't hurt that the Saints are right across the street from one of their offices on Poydras. And they also have an office in Lafayette. But anyway, we will talk more about Evangeline. We love our friends at Evangeline Securities. More on how they can help you figure out the rest of your life later in the show. In the meantime, you can check them out at www.evangelinesecurities.com. All right. One thing that we get to this time of year and it's time to come back, and some people, when they go on a vacation or they're out for a long period of time, they kind of dread coming back. Not me. And I mean this in all seriousness. I was ready to come back. You can only take so much of kids screaming at each other day after day for so long. Didn't do hardly anything. We went to a water park last week, but for the most part, hung around the house. I didn't do nearly as much exercising as I wanted to. Rocky, what's up? Welcome back. Thank you. That's it. But the kids are back in day camp. 4 weeks. It's 4 weeks until school starts. And if you think I'm not counting those days, then you're crazy. Coming up on the show in just a couple minutes, he's already in the green room, Hart Pasani. We're going to talk Saints. Hart is living in the Chicagoland area. Again, my second favorite city. Hart's been all over the last few years. Lived in Alaska, lived in Iowa. Now he's living in the Chicagoland area. So we're going to talk to him in a little bit of a minute. He's got a great new podcast called When the Lights Go Out that I have been, sometimes when people say, will you help me be a part of a project? Will you listen to this? I say, yeah. And then I help. And, I never know what to expect. And I might listen to 10 minutes of something. Okay, I'll listen to this later. Not this podcast. He's had 3 already. And I think episode 4 drops today. I listened to every minute of the first three podcasts, and it's a 6-part series. And I'm telling you, it is worth listening to. It's about I guess struggles is the right word, of many ex-athletes, and actually not just ex-athletes, some of it's future athletes. Some of it's a whole wide range of things. The last one, he talked to Walt Coleman, former NFL referee, who had some great comments about tuck rule. Talked about, of course, Hart had to spend a lot of time on the whole Rams game. I'm still pissed. I used to go on Dave Tacorbier's show after it happened, and I would open the show I think I went 8 or 9 months straight every Friday with, hey, he'd say, how you doing? I'd say, still pissed. Still pissed. Anyway, we'll talk to Hart in just a minute. I do want to talk about the Pels real quick. DeJounte Murray. Hello, DeJounte Murray. Yves Missi, Daniel Tice. Goodbye, Jonas Valanciunas, Larry Nance, Dyson Daniels. It's going to be a very different Pelicans team. But Jerry's ready for football season. I am too. I'm going to say about the Pelicans. We're going to talk. I think I'm going to spend a segment on the show next Wednesday with Fletcher, because Fletcher Mackle, besides our own Christian Clark, I think Fletcher Mackle is up there, who covers the Pels as well as anybody and talks about them. So that'll be next Wednesday coming up. I'll ask him what he thinks. But overall, I'm pleased with what the Pelicans have done. But they addressed the point guard situation, but they still don't have a big man, and we're still in no man's land with Brandon Ingram. What's going to happen with that? I don't know. I have no idea. And then our extra point this morning is a nice gesture. I don't want to ruin it by saying what it is, because Gabe might click off. He might get out of the green room if I say what it is right now, because it's about a player who did something, I think, nice for an opposing team in his favorite team's division. So can't say that what it is just yet. That's coming up. We'll end the show with that. But let's get into the Saints and more Saints talk. And we're going to bring in. I see he's extending his cord. He's getting himself ready. So I'll give him just a minute to get ready. But we're going to bring in Hart Pasani. And I tell you what. You know what? I tell you to keep it as positive as keep it positive, brother. I'm going to keep it positive. Well, it might not start out positive, but I tell you, we are going to find reasons for optimism at some point about the Saints. Want to bring in Hart Pisani, and we're going to start off. How are you, my friend?
How's it going, Jim? How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm back. I'm raring to go. I have not been on the air, at least not on my own airwaves, for 4 weeks. I have been working the past week and a half, working on NFL previews, which is a daunting task every year, but we enjoy it, and I'm fired up, and I'm ready to go, and there are no kids screaming in the background.
Yeah, that's always a nice one. I was going to say, give a warning. I got 2 cats here, so if you hear something meowing in the background, you're not going crazy.
I'll take meows over give me my phone back any day. Any day. All right, Hart, let's get into before we talk about the Saints, do want to talk about your podcast. And I know you heard what I said. I meant every word. I've listened to every minute of the first 3 episodes of When the Lights Go Out. It is the first 2 episodes kind of focus on addiction, and you are very, very open and honest about your own struggles with addiction throughout your life and throughout your career. And, I think there are so many of us that can relate. And it's not, you don't just have to have an alcohol or drug addiction, Hart, to appreciate addiction. Throughout my life, I have struggled with food addiction. And it is a real thing. And, I go through ups and downs. And, one of the things you talk about in the first 2 episodes of the podcast is, just because you're doing well at any given moment doesn't mean that addiction doesn't go away.
No, not at all. Absolutely. I mean, and yeah, I didn't have the same kind of struggles myself with food. My weight's fluctuated all over my life. I got up to 275 pounds a few years back, so yeah, it's something that, Todd Marinovich said in the first episode, he felt like sports was his first drug. And I'm like, yeah, I can get that, man. It's like you just can't get enough of it sometimes. The competition, we see guys even in sports that are like, when you start asking, well, why does this person keep going? Why doesn't he retire? I mean, it's like, well, man, he's been doing something or she's been doing something her entire life. It's hard to let go of that sometimes. And yeah, I mean, we can do it with television shows, with gambling. That's a really big thing. I'd love to do an episode in the future about gambling, since that's, really big now. But I mean, yeah, I mean, absolutely. And it affects all different walks of life. Like I said in the I think in the second episode, you can have nothing in common with something, and yet that can end up being something you have in common with that person, because it doesn't discriminate, for sure.
No, and you talk about Todd Marinovich. He is the subject of your first show, and he, first of all, a great job on getting these guests and getting them to open up and talk. I think that was really key to be able to do this podcast. And you also had a relief pitcher, Matt Bush, who was on the focus of the second episode. And the story of his life it really is a movie. It really is, and you go through it, and then the third episode is kind of sticks a little knife in me there when you open up talking about the no call game. You get into that, and but referees are people too. And I thought it was interesting that you maybe are not so hard on Bill Vinovich as you once were, and what you said maybe in the terrace of that day. I don't know, man. I don't know if I'm necessarily as pissed at Bill Vinovich, but I don't know that I can get over the guy that was standing right there and came in and basically stopped the other line judge from throwing his flag there. I don't think I can get over that still.
In the original version, like before I had to cut it down for time and everything, I think there was about like 9 different times where I said, I want to make it very clear, I'm still mad about this. I want to make sure everybody knows, like, I am not saying this was okay. Look, and like I said, and I still think I ended up saying like 3 or 4 times, look, at the end of the day, they got it wrong. It's their job to get it right. I'm never going to be okay with it, especially because we know, just as a side note, there's no doubt in my mind we would have beat the Pats that year. That was probably
zero doubt.
Oh, that was the weakest Tom Brady Super Bowl team that they ever had. I mean, 13-3, come on. So I understand. And look, I was as angry as possible for a long time. I think it's more just, like you mentioned, I freelanced back in New Orleans for several years. I was in Colorado, Alaska, Iowa, Texas. I'm up in the Chicagoland area now. And something that has been universal everywhere I go is that those dudes in the black and white striped shirts, I mean, they get no love, man. I'm talking like screamed at, cursed at, all sorts of stuff. And, it just comes down for me of like, look, I'm never going to be okay with the no call. I'm just kind of like, I'm done holding in my anger for it. Because when I hold that anger on, I end up taking it out on other people that had nothing to do with it, So, yeah, it's one of those.
There's also a big difference between, you talk about NFL referees who make hundreds of $1,000s a year, even though it's a part-time job, and the guys who do it on the high school level and little league level and pee wee level and whatever level, who you talk about, who are making $70 a game and having to drive. Sometimes they're spending $10, $15, $20 on gas and not getting reimbursed for gas. They want them to carpool together. And I just thought that was interesting. The first episode, also interesting, and that's the word of the day, I guess. But Gabe will find this. Gabe in the green room will find that he wants to listen. I meant to text him during this, then the hurricane hit and all kinds of things. But he needs to listen to episode 1, because you start off with something he texted me about a few weeks ago that he wanted to rant about, and we just never got to it. It wasn't that I wasn't going to let him to, but he rants. He can't stand the whole Baby Gronk thing. And you lead off episode 1 talking about how Baby Gronk, and for those who didn't know who Baby Gronk is, and I didn't know until I looked him up, is this kind of social media phenomenon created by this kid, what is he, 11 or 12 years old, created by his father. And he shows him every day, or not every day, but at least once a week, committing to some major school and wearing that team's jersey, sometimes having the helmet on. And he's got an Instagram page with, I don't know, 1 million or so followers, and people following this, but it's kind of shows you like where we are today, like something that would have never happened when I was a kid, or there was no social media then. But the hyping up of these kids, and they're committing now, this is a semi joke, but committing in 7th and 8th and even 9th grade is absurd. But it just kind of goes to show you where we are today and the pressures that are put unduly, I think, on these children.
Absolutely. I mean, there was a joke meme going around about some trade during you talked about the Pelicans, about some trade during the NBA draft. Like this team has a first round pick for the year 2030 or something like that. And somebody was doing the math of like, they made a trade for what is essentially someone who is currently in like fifth grade. Whoever they're going to draft is in like fifth grade, is 11 years old right now. And that's, we talked a lot in the first episode. I didn't include this initially because, I was kind of just heard this through the grapevine. But my last year, I mentioned in the first episode, freelancing back home, was Arch Manning's first year at Newman. I had heard through the grapevine that the reason you never saw any quotes from him anywhere was because Newman didn't allow freshmen to talk to the media because they knew everybody was going to want to talk to him because of what his last name was.
The Mannings didn't allow him to, and they didn't allow him to talk to the media as a freshman his first year at Texas either.
Yeah, they didn't. And I remember reading that Cooper told him, we're not letting you have Twitter or anything till like his sophomore or junior year. Yeah. So it was very calculated in trying to like kind of help him through the process, especially with how it is now. But I think the key quote in that first episode was one of the mental health professionals I talked to said she has had several patients of hers come in who said that they were relieved when they got injured because it meant they could take a break from what they were doing, this thing that's supposed to be fun and enjoyable. And you're right, like Baby Gronk is kind of just like the like epitome of like worst case scenario of what happens. Because really that is we make fun of people on social, like the social media influencers and that all the time, but that's really more his dad, taking advantage of this kid, introducing him to Ezekiel Elliott and Boozy and all these, and Livy Dunn and all these people. But yeah, it's really, while Todd Marinovich was kind of like the original version of that, it's only gotten worse, and it's only going to continue to get worse probably until we start kind of talking about, the relevancy of this more and more often.
Well, I highly suggest everyone, and again, this is a full-fledged endorsement. Again, not something that I'm just having someone on that I know and talk about. This is absolutely, again, I have listened to all of the first 3 episodes. Episode 4 has dropped already today.
Yeah, it dropped today. This one is entirely focused on women's athletics, issues that pertain specifically to them and how it can impact their mental health. I spoke with Val Whiting, who was a 2-time national champion with Stanford and played in the WNBA, and Maddie Hudak, who's the Tulane sideline reporter and host of Before the Whistle podcast, because we talked about toxic fandom and how that can impact all sorts of people in the 3rd episode. But I wanted to get her perspective and some of the stuff she's dealt with, because, there's just certain things that, women are going to have to hear that, are going to be specific to them that, I wanted to get that perspective on it. So, that's out right now.
As a girl dad, I'm all for it. I enjoyed last Sunday, the Cubs had their first ever all-female broadcast. Enjoyed the hell out of that, and I'm a big Cubs fan, as a lot of people know. But anyway, check it out. If When the Lights Go Out by Hart Pasani. It's a 6-part series. Part 4 was released today. You can catch up. You can listen to the first 3 episodes. Again, highly each episode's the range of an hour and 15, an hour and 30 minutes, and you can listen to them all, binge them like you do everything else. That's the society we live in now. All right, I got some comments and questions in the queue. I want to talk to you a little bit about the Saints, and I know you're in Bears country, but let's Patrick.
Do that all day though.
Yeah, exactly. You missed me. You said mixed, but then you fixed it. You missed me. Well, I missed all you guys. I am happy to be back. Again, Jerry says he's all ready for football season. All right. We have some other comments in the queue. We're going to get to them all. David, Brian, Rocky, I promise we're going to show them. But I want to start off this Saints segment. When you talk about questions, and I joked that there were 279 questions that the Saints have going into training camp. Maybe I'm not that far off, but we're just going to pick a few of them here today because we only have about another 20 minutes in the show to talk about it. But you can't talk about questions with the New Orleans Saints until you talk about Alvin Kamara. Now, the situation here in New Orleans is so much different. Chicago, as bad as they have been way worse than the Saints, obviously. Even the past 2 years. You can say spin it whatever way you want. But there's positivity in the Chicagoland area because they think Caleb Williams is going to be a savior and their new receiving core is going to change the world. And I mean, spoiler alert, I think the Bears are better, but I don't think they're that much better. But that's a whole different story. The Saints have been mediocre now since before Sean Payton left. And if Alvin Kamara doesn't come back and come back soon, Hart, I think that mediocre would be something you would strive for.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that has to get worked out, especially in the sense of like, I mean, as great as he's been since that contract extension, he wasn't quite the same Alvin Kamara he was before, but even half of what he was before is still very great. But now the question is, with Christian McCaffrey getting that kind of deal, he's going to want that kind of money. And I don't think, not only do we not have the money to do it, but figuring out kind of how all that works. But when you take him out, yeah, I mean, you're left with Keandre Miller and Jamal Williams, who were both banged up last year. I mean, so you're kind of almost in the situation of like, hey, do you give him what he wants just to kind of like keep the things rolling? I mean, obviously a compromise is going to have to be agreed upon at some point. My confidence says that, we'll get it figured out because we always kind of seem to do it. It's just going to be a matter of, it was a lot easier to give him that kind of money 4 years ago than it is now that he's a little bit older and we're in a different situation with, all the different pieces that we have and, Dennis Allen being on the hot seat and all that. So that's going to be key. If he comes in, I think that, we have the opportunity, potential to surprise some people, given some of the other things we've done. Without him, it's going to be kind of a tough ride.
Well, I agree. And I look, I've said this for months now. I am still not convinced that both Alvin Kamara, or you could say either or, Alvin Kamara and or Marshawn Lattimore. I know Marshawn Lattimore looks like he's playing nice. He's all excited, fired up. Until I see him on the field on September 8th, I gotta see it to believe it. So, and Alvin Kamara now, I mean, what's he going to hold out for? What's the best case scenario for him? I mean, what kind of extension can you give a 29-year-old running back? I mean, how far do you want to go? I mean, we all know that when you hit that big 3-0 and running back, that's like hitting, in my opinion, it's almost a big 6-0 in real life. I mean, it's a different ball game.
Absolutely. And, that's, like I said, the biggest thing is like we saw that contract extension that Christian McCaffrey got. Yeah, and he's trying to use that as like a measuring stick. But I think the difference is Christian McCaffrey, after those last 2 years in Carolina, looked like he was out, maybe done for, has completely rebuilt it. If the NFL didn't really make the MVP award the QB award, Christian McCaffrey would have been the MVP last year. Now, it's just one of those, it's really hard to say, like you said, especially with the age and given that, with the, I think last year it was an anomaly. He's not a disciplinary problem. Usually most of his career, he's been clean, but when you do have that, he's had that suspension, when you do have that injury history, when you do have, and I think that his performance will improve as the play calling improves and gets more innovative. I think just having a younger, more energetic guy in the room and Kubiak will definitely be a factor. But again, we won't know any of that until we get him on the field. How serious is the holdout? That's all stuff that's going to be really hard to answer. With the Lattimore thing, I do think that where we're at right now, I'm confident he'll be on the field to start. But I am wondering with how hard that schedule is to start, if we start off 1-4 and it comes around trade deadline week and Mickey Loomis is thinking like, maybe we got to make some moves here. Yep. We'll see what happens then. So I'm confident he'll start the year with the Saints. I don't know if he'll end the year with the Saints.
That's all going to lead into some things we got coming up. Barry says Kamara needs to come back better than he was the past 2 years. Can he? Will he? And my answer to that, Barry, is I think it depends a lot. It leads into my next question is, can the O-line overperform? And we have seen Kamara's numbers take a dip. And I think in part is because of Pete Carmichael's system. No. But also in part is because the offensive line has been a bottom 5 offensive line. And my problem, Hart, now is I think that they have the potential, don't hope I'm wrong, but they have the potential to be the worst offensive line in football. David Bordelon says, I'm positive Trevor Nasty Baby Penning, you mean, will get every chance and prediction will lock down the right tackle position. Thanks for the Marys, Ryan Ramczyk. I mean, I don't think any of us think that Ryan Ramczyk is coming back anytime soon, if ever. Do you believe that Trevor Penning can rejuvenate his career and become a starting right tackle?
So I actually covered Trevor Penning when I was at in Iowa. He was at the University of Northern Iowa. I was there the night he got drafted. So I've got some personal stake in and contrary to what we saw in his rookie training camp, I promise he's a really nice guy. I
believe that.
Yeah. I mean, I believe that if you can move him to right tackle or if you put him at right guard, I think he can be successful. I think asking him to play left tackle, the thing that made him so successful in college is he's a mauler. He's huge. He's got the size. He's got the strength. He's got the attitude. Left tackle, you got to be able to work with your feet. You got to be able to think real quickly. And I think that's not where his strengths lie. So I think he could be successful if you move him to a different position. Is he going to live up to that first round billing? Probably not. I have a hard time seeing that. But what we saw last year when they got him help at other positions and other people took on extra assignments, he had success, but the rest of the line fell apart because they were taking on too much. But I think if you take some of that responsibility away, now then he could have success. Now the issue comes to, in a perfect world, Ryan Ramczyk wakes up tomorrow. It's a miracle he's cured. But, I mean, we're not even sure if he's ever going to play a game again. So right now, what does that mean for Talisa Fuaga? Where do we put him? Then if you're putting Penning at right tackle and Fuaga at left tackle, I mean, we know who two of the starters are going to be on the offensive line.
That's it.
Yeah, Eric McCoy at center and, on the other guard position. Right now, we're looking at maybe having Nick Savardi start at guard, who, when he did get a chance to play last year, and that's all before you even get into the depth. I mean, right now, that 7th-round pick might actually lock down a roster spot because they just don't have the bodies. So, yeah.
I still think it's going to be Ali Udo at left guard. I know, Saldiveri has taken a step forward. I just can't imagine that they're going to throw it, because if you do that, Hart, I mean, you have to click on everything. And I said this on, I think I said this on Inside New Orleans the other day, but the thing that scares me is there's going to be a revolving door at left guard and right tackle. And to me, with the struggles that this offense has had, I mean, if you look at the numbers, I mean, they did fine. They were 12th in the NFL in total offense. But if you have a revolving door and offensive line that was already bad, you're just begging for trouble. And to me, they have to find consistency. So for this team to be good on offense and to be successful, I just think they need to figure out who it's going to be and throw them in there. And at least, when they gave Penning a chance, I will say this. They gave him a real chance. Finally, after about the 5th or 6th game, I don't remember exactly how many games, but they said, we can't do this anymore. And then Anders Pete played left tackle, and it worked out. But that's one thing I think this team needs to do is they need to figure out who the starting 5 is and say, this is what we're going with for like 4 or 5 games. And we're going to get the schedule in a minute, and it's brutal. But let these guys gel, because you can't continue to change this offensive line once the season starts, in my opinion.
And I think the real sad part, or I'm saying sad, potentially it could be sad part, is all the reports on Fuaga were he's good enough, has the talent enough to play left tackle, but you're concerned about the arms.
Right.
You can put him at right tackle, and he could be very successful. You move him to guard, he could be an all-pro. But the thing is, right now, until we get into preseason or regular season and see stuff, I don't know where he's going to be. I don't know if they know where he's going to end up being. So asking a 22, 23-year-old kid, try to learn how to play 3 different positions when you're just getting in the NFL, that's a lot of pressure to put on somebody, and especially when they're a rookie. So I'm 100% with you. I mean, even, if they get the other guy starting at left guard, I mean, just find a position for guys to be at, because we can't do this thing where right now McCoy is the center, Ramirez is the guard, and then everybody else, we'll figure it out and hope it gels along. You don't have the luxury to do that, especially with how brutal that first month of the schedule is. I mean, it wouldn't blow my mind if we started off, 1-5 in that situation. Yeah, just look at it right there. Because the rest of the year, you have an opportunity to close out strong with some winnable games, but momentum is a big thing in the NFL, and that's a really, really brutal stretch with Dallas, Philly, Kansas City, even Tampa Bay.
I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, you've got to find a way to go 2-3. Okay. And I mean, realistically 3-3, in my opinion. So, and that assumes that you're going to beat the Panthers and beat the Buccaneers, which obviously I don't think either one of those things is a given. I think I'm not going to give any spoiler alerts on my NFC South predictions, but I think the Panthers are going to be much better overall. I think that the Buccaneers might be a little bit worse. So I think it's the Falcons kind of and everybody else right now, but you have got to find a way to win 3 of those first 6 games, in my opinion, and go, if you can go 3-3, and I think that gives you momentum. And like you said, the back half of the schedule is, it's easier, but I don't think it's nearly as easy as everyone thinks because, you know, again, spoiler alert, I think the Browns are going to be way better than anyone thinks they are. I think the Packers are a Super Bowl contender. I think the Rams are potentially a Super Bowl contender. So it's not as easy as everyone talks about, but it's easier. And then the Chargers, the upstart Chargers, Sean Payton coming into New Orleans. So this schedule is nowhere near as easy as it was last year. They're going to have to find a way to navigate it.
I mean, that's the thing. The kind of bummer is that we had one of the easiest schedules in the history of the NFL last year and still kind of, you know, stumbled to mediocrity. But I'm 100% with you. I mean, you can't start off losing to Carolina. I do think they will be better. Like you said, I think Dave Canales alone coming in is a big help.
Yeah.
I do think that people, because CJ Stroud had so much success, people were really quick to say, oh, the Panthers got it wrong taking Bryce Young. Give the kid a chance. But I would still say that's a game you need to win. Atlanta, absolutely must win. Atlanta, yeah, I think just having Kirk Cousins, you know, definitely helps. I think that they will be a better team potentially, especially just, you know, getting some new blood in their coaching staff. I think Tampa will be a little worse too, but still good enough to beat you potentially. And yeah, if you could steal a game against Dallas or Philly, that'd be great. But I mean, that's a really, really tough ask. But like you said, even after that, I mean, on paper, I think we beat Denver 9 times out of 10. But Sean Payton coming back into New Orleans on Thursday Night Football.
Can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting for sure. But, you know, I mean, even the Chargers, while they're on paper, yes, they lost a lot. You can't really, you know, count them out too when you got Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh. I think Cleveland's going to be a lot better. If LA is healthy when we play them, that is a very scary team. The Giants, yeah, on paper, we should win, but who knows? I mean, are they the Giants from 2 years ago or last year? Commanders should win, but a whole lot of new stuff. I mean, there's all sorts of unknowns in that situation. I think that we have the potential, if everything goes well, to win 10 games. If everything doesn't go well, it's going to be a lot worse. And, you know, can this staff get everything figured out? I like the hire of Kubiak, but, you know, going into your next part, I have not seen a lot to inspire confidence in me that Dennis Allen can get the job done.
Oh man, don't get me started. Because I'm trying to keep it positive, brother. That's what we do here on Dattitude. Keeping it positive. No, that's not what we always do. You know, look, I think 10 wins is the absolute ceiling for this team. I'm not saying it's not possible they get 10 wins, because I do think it's possible, but everything, and I mean everything, would have to go right. David Bordelon says, let's see, almost clicked on the wrong one. D-line pressure with our secondary will have to carry us early until the O-line gets settled. I mean, that, to me, though, that's a problem because the D-line has not got pressure. They were one of the worst pressure teams in the entire NFL last year. That is going to have to change. We'll talk about that in a second. Chris, Who Dat Nation will come together. We got an all the way to the Super Bowl from Chris. This is what I love about the show. Every end of the spectrum. Chris is saying all the way to the Super Bowl. Okay. And then you got Brian saying a 1-5 or a 0-6 start. That's what I love about this show. You got it all.
All the spectrum, right?
What do you think about the defensive line and you know, Cam Jordan is 35 years old. you're hoping Chase Young is ready, and I think he will be. And I think he's great. I'm worried about the interior of the defensive line and being able to stop the likes of Bijan Robinson and Saquon Barkley, and you can go down the list, and all the other running backs are gonna have to play. Nick Chubb.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you said, if everything clicks, if Cam Jordan kind of has a resurrection season, if Chase Young can stay healthy all year long and be that Chase Young that we've seen when he's at his best, if, some of the other rotational guys can get a little more in, if some of those younger interior linemen can take that next step forward, that all sounds great in theory, but that's a lot of ifs to be putting on that situation. Yeah, in theory, I apologize, I'm blanking on his name right now, but the linebacker we signed from Kansas City,
Willie Gay.
Yeah, Willie Gay. He fits the situational pass rush great. Is he going to work in a different system? I don't know. Even in the secondary, on paper, there's a lot of great pieces. I love the addition of Kool-Aid McKinstry. In theory, I mean, we've seen, Paulson Adebo is a really great corner. Alante Taylor, when used, he's been very up and down, but, as a number 3 is a good position to be in. Jordan Howden, but that's another situation of the moment people start getting injured, what is going to happen? What are we going to rely on? Because this is a team that's really struggled staying healthy. And that's before you even get into the linebacking depth, because, DeMario is DeMario, but when is that year going to come where the age starts to show? Yeah, exactly. Pete Werner, has been very up and down all over the place. So there were a lot of times that defense bailed us out, where kept us in games we probably had no business being in. But what's going to happen when they're playing teams like Kansas City and Philly and Dallas and the Rams, if healthy? That's where it's going to be a lot harder. So again, in theory, if things click, they got the potential to be a great team. But there's a whole lot of ifs that got to get figured out. And yeah, we'll see what happens.
Well, lastly, here on the Saints, we talked about Dennis Allen, and look, if this is not a team, this is not a franchise that is one that likes to make moves or is willing to make moves in the middle of the season. I mean, Jim Haslett went through Katrina year and went 3-13 and didn't get fired till the year was over. When he was already on the hot seat anyway. I understand Katrina might have, they might have said there's no reason to make a change or whatever, but this is not a team that makes changes, at least not under Tom Benson in the middle of the season. So with that being said, if this team were to start out like 2-7, which is entirely possible. I mean, you talk about the ceiling being 10 wins. I think the floor is like 4 or 5 wins. I mean, realistically, things don't bounce your way. If you lose that Panthers game, I don't know what the hell's going to happen. I mean, I'm gonna be honest. They I don't think they'll start 0-6, and I don't think they'll start 1-5. But if you lose that Panthers game, I don't know what's going to happen. What do you think? How hot is the seat for Dennis Allen? Do you think that if they can't start quickly, then he's gone in the middle of the season?
Like you said, this is a franchise that historically, I think the last time I remember them making an in-season move was Rob Ryan getting the Cam with a couple games left in the regular season.
And that was coordinator, but
Yeah, exactly. So, I think this is a team that they will, in theory, what you should do is if they start off 0-6, because Clint Kubiak is considered this young, up-and-coming kind of guy, it'd be interesting to see if he takes on an interim role. But like you said, I just don't see them kind of getting into that position. They don't like to have that kind of reputation. They don't like to be that kind of team. I do think that if you go in that direction, what they should do is then kind of go all in on this rebuild. They
should have done that already.
Oh, absolutely. And I know a lot of times teams, when they go all in that rebuild, most of the time it doesn't work out. I understand wanting to kind of stay in that realm of kind of compete for the playoffs and all that. But at the same time, you kind of have to face the facts that Demario Davis is a Saints Hall of Famer, Saints Ring of Honor. But I mean, he's 33, 34 years old. Cam Jordan, all-time Saints great, but he's 35 years old. I mean, Alvin Kamara is coming up on 30 years old. I think Derek Carr gets a lot more heat than he deserves.
100%.
A lot more heat than he deserves. I think he's much better than people give him credit for. But I also know, given the contract, given the state of it where he's at, given the state of everything else happening all at the same time, I think it would make sense that if you get that 0-6 start, I don't see you turning it around really. That's kind of when you go in the direction of we need to start looking at some other options at the end of the year. I think it should be mid-year, but, you know.
Well, I'm going to say this, Hart. I think that, you know, you talk about rebuilds. It's not the same as rebuilding 20 years ago. I think look at what the Texans did. And they were in a rebuild mode. And now that doesn't always happen. I mean, they also got a little bit lucky that they weren't the first pick, because they had the first pick. I don't care what anybody says. They would have taken Bryce Young like everybody else. Mm-hmm. So the fact they had the second pick and didn't have a choice and took CJ Stroud, and it worked out, and they got a new coach who breathed life into this moribund franchise, in my opinion. Sorry, Gabe Henderson, but moribund franchise. I mean, just because they went to the playoffs a few times, who cares? But this is a different team now. And so there's all this excitement in Houston. And I think that's kind of where I am with the Saints. I just think the Saints are in a position. Look, you can't just keep going through mediocre and thinking it's not good enough to say, okay, we're going to kick the can down the road. And I know people hate that phrase. They keep kicking the can down the road. So what? You have a potential to win a lousy division, go to the playoffs and get your ass kicked? I mean, they're not even doing that. So, I mean, look, I don't know what they're doing, but if this season turns out like I think most of us think it's going to turn out, and I'm not wishing for it to turn out that way, I hope I'm wrong. I hope I sit here in January and say, wow, Saints won 11 games. I mean, I was so wrong about this team. They beat Atlanta twice. They did whatever. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I get to sit here and say that, but I just don't think it's going to happen. And I think that massive changes are going to need to be made. And I'm talking about not just the coaching staff, but scouring through this roster.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. When we initially hired Dennis Allen, I gave it 2 thumbs up to the move because I thought he earned the opportunity. I thought, yeah, he had that struggles with the Raiders, but that was at a time when the Raiders were just like everybody was getting fired every year. You know, I didn't think he had a chance to succeed. But I think what we're seeing right now is that he hasn't been able to rise to the occasion to take on that next role. Look, some people are great coordinators. Norv Turner, Wade Phillips, there's so many great all-time great coordinators that they just don't have the success when they go to the next position up. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a matter of, but yeah, like you said, if they can't get those things figured out, I mean, what do you do with a 33-year-old quarterback, a 29-year-old running back, you know, pieces like 2 pieces of an offensive line, a 35-year-old defensive end, a 34-year-old linebacker, even Marshawn Lattimore corners. Once you start hitting 30, that's not exactly a spring chicken.
He'll be going soon anyway. I mean, let's be realistic. I mean, I'm surprised he's still here now, but I got to be honest. I will be incredibly shocked if Marshawn Lattimore is a Saint this time next July 12th. I'll just be shocked. I
don't see, especially with the assets that you can pile up. I mean,
correct.
Right now, you know, I mean, we've seen with other corners, it's not going to be what we think. There are fans who are like, how did we not get a first-round pick for Marshawn Lattimore? Because, like, Xavier Howard went for a third-round pick. That's why.
Yeah, right. You're not going to get a first-round pick. But if you get a desperate team before the trade deadline, again, another thing I was talking about, I can't remember which show. I think it was Inside New Orleans again. But, I mean, maybe you get a second-round pick and a player for Marshawn Lattimore if someone's desperate enough at the trade deadline and you're not going anywhere. It's a possibility, something to look out for. All right, the optimistic. I said I would leave. We would talk about something that was optimistic. What is your one take if you had to find something that's optimistic about this team? What is your take?
I honestly, from like 3 years ago being the weakness of the team, I really like this receiving core.
For sure.
I think Chris Olave is one of the best young receivers in the game, has the potential to be a top 10, top 5 receiver very soon here. I love Rashid Shaheed, and not only just his story, especially being a local guy, but I mean, that's a great speed threat. That's a legitimately great speed threat. I think Cedric Wilson, is he going to be a superstar number 3 receiver? No, but I think that he plays his role well. I am actually also, I know we all forgot about it because it was in April. I love this draft class we got, man. I thought Bub Means.
I like it as well.
I don't want to put too much pressure on a 5th round receiver, but I think long term Bub Means could really be a steal. I love those first.
Jalen Ford could be a steal.
I think Jalen Ford, but I think because he had a couple of inconsistent moments last year, slid a little bit. I think that is a long term really good player.
For sure.
Potentially those last 2 picks in the 6th and 7th round, Christian Boyd from UNI and the offensive tackle potential to build up. Yeah. And who knows? I mean, I'm not as high on Spencer Rattler, but that's a guy that we forget.
Don't get me started on Spencer Rattler. I could do a whole show on telling you why I think, but then people love him, so then people would probably turn me off. But
I'm not a believer in Spencer Rattler either. But I will even add that hey, the guy was the number 1 recruit in the country, was once considered a top overall pick. I believe. Show it to me. Show it to me. I'm higher on Jake Haener, if anything.
Much higher.
But again, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Talisa Fuaga, I think the young guys that they have put on this team, if they are to go into a rebuild, there are some really good pieces to build around right now.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly, Hart. I think that they are set up. They're actually in a good position to rebuild. I am never, and anyone who's listened to me for more than a few shows knows I am not a tanking guy. I don't care if you're 1-13, you don't lose on purpose. I think there is nothing worse than losing on purpose. It's the dumbest thing ever. It doesn't accomplish a damn thing. It's dumb. And you especially don't go into a season wanting to lose on purpose. That's just moronic. There are people out there. By the way, Dylan, thank you. I'm glad to be back. I actually have like 3 fans.
It's 2 more than me.
But I just think that this team is in a great position to where if they have to, they're actually in a decent position to be able to do that. It's not going to be, if they have to hit the reboot button, it's obviously not going to be Dennis-Allen, but you've got to get this fan base on board. It's kind of like, I don't talk politics on the show, but I will say it's kind of like the presidential election. Nobody likes anybody. No one wants either one of these guys in president. Well, nobody really in the grand scheme of things. And I'm not trying to be mean to Dennis-Allen, but I mean, who's gung-ho about Dennis-Allen? I want him to prove me wrong. I want to come in here in January and say, you know what he did with that last chance? He proved all the skeptics wrong, and I'll be the first one to say it if he does it. But it's hard to get fired up about Dennis-Allen.
Yeah, it's difficult for where things are at right now, especially last year. I know it's cliche, but everybody said it on Twitter because it's true. You can be bad, but when you're bad and boring, that's a different story. And we were very boring last year. It was not a fun team to watch. So yeah, I don't think a lot of people are fired up. I don't think people are very excited. I will say, I think maybe it was Catherine Terrell, maybe it was Luke Johnson. Somebody on Twitter, one of the Saints regular followers, said the issue with the Saints is they are not as bad as the fan base thinks they are, but they're not as good as the franchise thinks that they are.
100% true.
Yeah.
That is 100% true.
They seem to think that they're in position to really compete for something meaningful. No, they are not. The fans seem to think that this is a one-win team. No, we are not. But, what does that leave you at? It means you got some changes you got to make. It's hard to get excited. Again, I'm 100% with you. I don't believe in tanking. I think it's dumb because you can tank all you want and somebody else still ends up with a pick ahead of you.
Doesn't prove a damn thing.
Exactly. But at the same time, it's kind of like I have no idea what to expect, but I'll be watching. I've been a Saints fan my whole life. I will be watching no matter what. Interesting is the right word to say, but interesting can go a few different directions.
Hart Pasani, thank you so much for joining us. I want everybody to go there, check out When the Lights Go Out, episode number 4 of 6. Drop today, but go back and catch up on it first. You don't have to. It's one of those podcasts where you don't really have to listen to them in order, but it probably serves you better to. So go back and listen to episode 1. And I wish you nothing but the best, Hart. And thanks for having me on and being you'll hear my voice on episodes 1 and 3.
Absolutely. And I got you coming back in episode 6 as well.
Looking forward to it.
Monday is episode 5. A week from today is the final episode. I appreciate you having me on. It's been a lot of fun. It's been great. Thank you.
Absolutely, Hart. We'll have you on again, and good luck. Let me know how it's going. I appreciate you involving me in all this, and we'll have you on again during the season to talk about the Saints.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to it.
Hart Pasani, everybody. Again, I'm being serious. Check out his podcast, When the Lights Go Out. Easy to find wherever you get your podcast. Worth checking out. All right, a couple things here in the queue that I never got to. And Hart, Rocky, if they rebuild, they should call Belichick. No. I'm gonna say this. If they rebuild, if they do the rebuild, you need to go get a young, energetic coach. And I know there are people out there. In fact, somewhere here it is. Right? You also said this. Kubiak becomes the guy if Allen's going. I'm not sure. And I definitely I wouldn't want to go out there and say let's get Kubiak and just throw him in as the head coach and make him the head coach. I think the only way Kubiak would become the head coach is if the unlikelihood that Allen gets fired midseason, they do give the interim reins to Kubiak. He's able to navigate through the season, the rest of whatever season he has left, and win some games and have a winning record and show some excitement. I don't know. Maybe he's the answer, maybe he's not. I'm just thinking if they're going to do a rebuild, you have to do what the Texans did. And you have to go out and get you have to do what the Colts did. I mean, the Colts are going to be better. You have to do with, a lot of other teams are doing. Arizona. I mean, I'm not sure Arizona's going to be better. I mean, the Carolina went out and got Dave Canales. I just think that you have to go get a young coach if you're going to start over. Again, I don't know if they're going to have to or not. Again, I hope I'm wrong. Let's win game 1 against the Panthers. I tell you what, I think the Cowboys could be a dumpster fire. So, I mean, that's a potential victory. This team has the potential to start 2-0. I don't think they have any chance to beat the Eagles because they just don't match up well against mobile quarterbacks. I just don't think they can beat Jalen Hurts. And I think the Eagles are going to be one of the best teams in the NFC. So I think the Eagles and the Chiefs you can mark those two as L's. I don't think the Saints have any chance to win those games. That's my opinion. But Panthers, Cowboys, Falcons, Buccaneers, I mean, I think the ceiling is 4-2. Now, that might be a pipe dream. Everything would have to go right, but it's possible. But what's the floor? Ugh. The floor ain't good. Stay away from the floor. Brian, everyone must know something about Olave. He's not a number 1 receiver. If I'm wrong, great, but I don't know, man. I think Olave is the real deal. I'm a big fan of Olave. I think I don't know if he's a top 5 receiver, but I think he has the potential to get in there, and I think he might be top 10 right now. I mean, the problem is you have to find someone. You have to have an offensive line that has a quarterback that's not mobile, that's able to have time to throw him the football. I mean, Gabe says he thinks Olave is a legit number 1, not top 5 or 10 in the league. I don't think he's top 5, but I think he's fringe top 10. But he's certainly a number 1, not just because he's on this team and he's the number 1 on this team. I just think he's number 1. I think he's a number 1. I mean, if you're saying he's not a number 1 receiver, then you're essentially saying he's not one of the top best 32 receivers in the National Football League. That's crazy. He certainly is that. All right, I'll tell you what, before we move on to the extra point, I want to continue my story here. We told you earlier we would let you know more about Evangeline Securities and how they can help you figure out what your family or your privately owned business might be worth and whether it's time to sell. How do they do it? Well, after their complimentary evaluation of your company, if you decide to proceed, Orleanians Nick Braden, Ron Hemelton, the folks at Evangeline will begin an extensive auction process among established private equity funds from around the world and maximize the return process for the founder and his or her family. Then it will be time for the party. Hey, I'm always ready and willing. I'm willing and able to host that party. If you need a host, I don't need a microphone. Just bring me out there. Assuming you have hot dogs. Nachos are optional. Beer would be cool too. I like Modelo and Guinness, by the way. Evangeline Securities is the top producer on their platform, and there are very few companies like them in this area. None with their dedication and success. They are fully licensed and ready to serve you, so get in touch with Nick and Ron. Do it now. All right. You don't have to do it right now, but do it soon, because Nick and Ron can help you shape what's really important, and that is the rest of your life. You can find them at www.evangelinesecurities.com. All right, it's time for the extra point. We haven't had one in a little while. All right, before we go, don't forget A.T. Perry. I'm not forgetting him, but A.T. Perry is the number 4 receiver on this team. Look, we have decent receivers on this football team. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out if Derek Carr has time to throw. But we'll get into this next week. But Derek Carr's over-under passing yardage is like 2,750, and that's up from like 2,500 not too long ago. The odds makers aren't expecting much from Derek Carr. That's because they probably don't expect him to play 17 games. Are they right? Maybe. All right. Moving on to the extra point. Sorry, Gabe. I want to talk about something I saw earlier in the week, which I thought was one of the coolest gestures I have recently seen in sports. So you likely know that there are 2 Josh Allens in the NFL. The incredibly talented quarterback from the Buffalo Bills, and maybe the most underrated defensive player in the NFL. The defensive lineman from the Jacksonville Jaguars, who, by the way, recorded a franchise record 17.5 sacks in 2023. But this week, the latter decided he was going to end some of that confusion by changing his name to Josh Hines-Allen to pay tribute to his mother's side of the family. Now, that's a nice gesture in itself, although Dattitude is not certain he would have done so had there not been a more recognized Josh Allen already in the league. Regardless, what struck me in this story was what he decided to do for fans in the wake of this major change. The defensive star announced that he would personally exchange all those who own a 41 Allen jersey for a brand new one at a big discount so they can don the 41 Hines-Allen, as you see here on the screen. Sure, he signed a 5-year, $150 million extension with the team a few months ago, but who cares? In an age where professional athletes and team owners seem to quabble over every last dollar, Josh Hines-Allen is putting up his own money so that Jaguars fans can rep their favorite player with a brand new jersey. And if you've been to the NFL team shop lately, you know those things ain't cheap. One Jacksonville store owner told a local TV station his phone has been ringing off the hook, and he expects a new shipment in by August 15th. Good job, Mr. Hines-Allen. And since the Saints don't play you this season, we here at Dattitude, except for maybe one behind-the-scenes producer, will be rooting for your success. Rooting. Tooting. Your success. All right. How about that for a show back? Next week, it's going to be fun again. You got Doug Mouton, WWL TV. He's coming in on Monday. Saints. Talking about Saints camp starting up July 24th. Camp starts. It actually is a little bit earlier than that because I think the rookies report on, I don't know. I think it's the 18th or something. So that's next week. Fletcher Mackel, WDSU, Wednesday. Talking about mostly Saints, but we will definitely have a Pelicans segment in there. We will certainly be talking a little bit about Paul Skeens. Got some Paul Skeens comments earlier. Where are they? I don't know. I lost them. Somewhere. There we go. Skeens in Cooperstown. Come on, man. I think he started 8 major league games. Let's not get too crazy yet. Remember, there was a guy named Steven Strasburg. Remember him? Yeah. That didn't work out so well. He got hurt too much. I'm going for Klimt. I need to go off the air. So anyway, and then Friday, we begin our NFL previews. Larry Holder. We're going to do it different this year than we've done it the past couple of years. Larry Holder will be with me every Friday, beginning next Friday, through, I think, until the Super Bowl. I mean, there might be a Friday here or there where he can't make it or something's going on or they play on Thursday and we do it on whatever it is. But Larry Holder, back in his regular Friday time slot. Also, outside programming note, you know that we're on Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays. Beginning on Monday, you will be able to catch me every Monday afternoon at 4:35 on Inside New Orleans, the radio broadcast on the Ticket, 106.1. It'll be me at 4:35. Larry and I'll be together, just together but apart. I'll be at 4:35. I think he's at 5:35. So Larry and I will be together apart on Mondays, but on Fridays, together. We got a lot of stuff going on. All right, that will wrap it up for us on this Friday. So glad to be back. Looking forward to the train's moving. You go to sleep on July 11th and you wake up and it's like February the 10th. I don't know what it is. So guess I'm not going to get too much sleep, but that's okay. I want to thank today's guest, Hart Pasani, for helping kick off the second half of the season here as we get into the real part, the part where everyone's interested. Of course, I also want to thank Gabe Henderson, who's working behind the scenes, and he's doing so away from his own home. Let's give him a little one of these and hope he can go back home soon, get the power on. We hope you can join us next on Monday when we'll welcome in Doug Mouton. A reminder to subscribe to our Dattitude YouTube page. Click the little bell to receive notifications when we go on the air live. You can also find us wherever you get your podcast, including Apple, Spotify, and many more. Also, you know this already, but you can find a replay of the show on NOLA.com/sports. We will see you on Monday. Everyone have a wonderful weekend. Take it easy, my friends.
If you're looking for the latest scoop and in-depth interviews on the Saints, the NFL, the Pelicans, LSU, along with the best bets of the week, then lucky you. Along with high-powered, in-the-know guests who cover our teams, Jim Derry brings plenty of Dattitude. And he'll always tell you the way it is, or at least the way he thinks it is.